Hello, people of the world. Welcome to part 6 in the BUSTTMAM series about the lovely minimalist factory builder, Shapez. I am Bins, and after I walked you through the concept of tick synchronization in last video, today we can start getting into how the decoder of this machine actually works. If you have followed along the BUSTTMAM series and the previous videos as well, you should already have a pretty good idea about the macro algorithm with which this machine runs. But I will recap anyway for those that don't know and for those who would like a reminder. So, the idea behind my decoder is that from a given target shape, an analysis will take place that defines which floating pieces there are to be found in the shape. All of the possibilities that are found are lined up, and then a set of them is selected and sent through the rest of the decoder. After a set of candidates is selected, all of the shape quadrants that are contained within any of the selected candidates are removed from or deducted from the final input shape. This creates what I would like to call the remainder. And finally, the selected set of candidates is lined up with that remainder, gets presented to the validator, and the validator will try to stack the candidates together to see if that gives us the final result we need. If there is a match, then the candidate pieces are locked in and get sent to production, and otherwise the next candidate set with its corresponding remainder will be considered, and we repeat that until a solution is found. So that's the global idea, right? The algorithm. Now, today we are going to have a look at the first step in that process, which is determining which floating pieces there are in a shape and retrieving them. So, the first thing to do here is considering how many floating pieces there are. How many exist? Do you have an idea? Want to take a guess? Well, you might want to pause the video if so, because I'm going to tell you. The answer is 48. For any conceivable shape that consists of up to 4 quadrants per layer and with a potential total of 4 layers, therefore making up a shape of up to 16 quadrants in total, there are 48 types of floating pieces that can exist, types of floating pieces that we can imagine. Why that number? Well, we can break that down. Have a look. So we have this floating piece right here, okay? This floating piece can exist in 4 rotations. The right-hand side, the bottom, the left-hand side, and the top. Right? So that gives us 1, 2, 3, 4. But now we can also envision what I call the complement of this floating shape, which is what we get if we flip the layers. And that would be this one. And also here we have a set of 4 rotations. Again, right, bottom, left, and top. Okay, so added up, that gives us a set of 8 floating shapes, each one in each rotation with its corresponding complement. Okay, 6, 7, 8. That would be the set that corresponds to this floating shape. But now, those come in several varieties as well, because floating layers, floating shapes, can consist of 1 up to 4 layers. So a first set of 8 candidates is the one we get with 4 layers, right? This would be the set for floating shapes with 4 layers. A next set we have is the one with 3 layers. Now, since a shape can be 4 layers high, we actually get 2 sets of 3-layer floating pieces, or trifloats, right? The first set of trifloats is the one where the shapes are located on the 4th, the third, and the second layer. And the second set is the one where the quadrants are located on the first, the second, and the third, right? So this is the top trifloat set. This is the bottom trifloat set. And then, finally, floating pieces can consist of 2 layers as well. And when we take the height, so to speak, into account, here we get 3 sets. Layers 4 and 3, layers 3 and 2, and layers 2 and 1. And if we add all of that up, we get a total of 48 floating pieces that we could theoretically get out of any given shape. That is why that number is 48. So what I did in my machine is I am simply going to analyze which of these floating pieces exist in my shape, and I'm going to line them all up. So how can we extract these pieces from the floating shape, from the shape? That's what I would like to have a look at right now. So imagine this shape, right? You can see, because of the colors I chose, which shape, which floating piece I'm gonna wanna extract from that. And the process is actually fairly simple and straightforward. So we start with an unstacker. There we go. And we want to extract the bottom quadrant, so the blue quadrant from that. So we take a splitter. We don't need this part, so we can neglect that entirely. We need to rotate this once. Then another splitter or cutter, and this is the shape we need from that, okay? And now for the other one, we're gonna do a similar thing. We're going to connect that. Come on. There we go. So here we need to pay attention that we need this other signal. Okay. And then we need that for layers 1 and 2 as well. Okay, so we have the 4 quadrants extracted, and now we are going to stack that virtually. I hope you have an idea about how stacking of floating shapes works at this point, because if you don't, the next part is going to be confusing. I'm not going to get into that. But here we can see that both of the quadrants are located on the bottom, so our scaffolding piece would have to be at the top, right? So we can get, for example, this for a scaffolding piece. We repeat that here, and then we stack that there and there, and we are going to do the same thing here. Now, that is what we get. We stack that together, we stack that together, and we stack that together. There we go. And now a final thing we need to do is cut away the scaffolding. So another cutter, boom, and we take this side, and now we need to make sure that we want the right hand side, so we rotate the signal twice. And that is how we can extract this floating quadrant, this floating piece, from the final shape, right? Now, obviously, this setup is very sloppy because I just, quickly did it as for demonstration purposes. What I did in the end was I made this very slim layout that is going to extract all of the floating pieces in exactly 15 ticks. Because if you remember last video about the tick synchronization, I wanted to make sure that all of these extractors for all of the floating pieces had exactly the same amount of ticks. required exactly the same amount of ticks to find their shape. And this slim design is 6 cells wide. There we go. That's how it extracts the thing. And as you can see right here, this slim design, hold on a second, this pretty slim design allowed me to line 48 of these things up side by side, and then we are going to try all of them. Now, for any shape that actually has floating layers, we will get back to this in at a later point, but not all of these will actually contain shapes, only some of them, right? But we need the framework, so to speak, so that any floating piece that the shape might contain can get found. And I decided, since 48 is a number you can work with, right? I decided to just brute force them and line them up, one next to the other. Each one is going to extract one of those 48 types of floating pieces. Okay, and then I guess I can say that now. I actually have 2 identical machines, as you may have gathered from the layout. What I am going to do now with this machine is, after I have determined which floating pieces there are, I am going to, try the candidates, and I'm going to send pulses, and each pulse selects a set of candidates and is going to send that through the machine. And the next thing I want to talk to you about is how that works. So let's get to the ticker. Now, the ticker, this is a piece of art, and I have to admit, I have to come clean that I did not come up with this ticker design. This is a binary ticker that was provided to me by Skimnerfi, once again, and it is a feat of genius, if you ask me, because it is a binary ticker that allows for a bypass. Have a look at what I mean. So I am going to connect a signal here, and I'm just going to take a red color. Why not? There we go. And here is my output, right? So let's connect the display to that. And now, if we add a pulse ticker to that, give me a second. If we add a pulse ticker to that, then that is going to, toggle these things. But now I can chain this up, right? So if I connect this and I add a, let's say a yellow signal. Hold on, I feel like I need to reset this. And I did my ticker wrong. That's why it was acting weirdly. So this is what it should look like. So now, if I send pulses through this machine, look at what we're gonna get. Nothing, red, yellow, red and yellow, and nothing again. This is a binary principle, right? So let's turn 2 into 4. Let's make this green, let's make this blue, and add the other displays. So, once again, red, yellow, red and yellow, green, red, green and red, green and yellow, green, red and yellow, blue, blue and red, blue and yellow, red, yellow and blue, red, green and blue, and so on, right? So this is a binary mechanism. And now what the brilliant thing of this pulsator, or this binary ticker is that we do not need inputs for all of the lines. So if I cut the yellow, for example, now we have a binary ticker with 3 elements instead of 4. Have a look. Red, green, red and green, blue, red and blue, green and blue, red, green and blue, and 0. So the yellow is bypassed completely, and that is exactly what I needed for my machine. Now let's get the pause and step mod in, and let's see how that works in slow motion. So I click the button, it is going to generate a pulse, right? And here we have a fork in the road that determines whether I'm going to send my signal into this XOR gate thing, or we are going to have the signal take the bottom route, which would be the bypass route, okay? The way that is determined is as follows. Here, we pick up that we have a signal, okay? The signal is connected to the output line, right? So the red could continue upwards. Now, thanks to the NOT gate, this is going to be converted into a 0, and this transistor is going to be shut off. Therefore, this is going to not have a signal on this wire is not going to have any signal, and because of the XOR gate that is connected to a constant 1 signal, the pulse that we currently have on the line, it is allowed to take the upper route. So in the next tick, we will see that this line turns into a 0, and it will activate this XOR gate, allowing the signal to continue. Now, this signal continues, right? Sorry, let's do that again. So this signal continues. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to send another pulse through the machine. And now, after this signal continues here, now the pulse is currently here, we see that in this case, because we don't have an input signal, this NOT gate turns this transistor into a 1. The signal is allowed to pass, and we get a 1 on this transistor now. At the same time, because we have a 1 here and we have a 1 here, both feeding into the XOR gate, this transistor is shut off, and that means that the signal will not reach this little contraption. Instead, it will take the bottom route. So in practice, that means that is how the yellow is bypassed for this machine. Here, the same thing will happen again. Because we do have a signal, the signal takes the upper route, and it will activate this signal right here. And that is how we get a binary ticker. Now, this is a binary ticker with 4 examples, but as you saw in the machine, as you know by now, in the actual thing, this is a binary ticker with 48 inputs. So we really needed a system that would allow me to bypass, because otherwise, in all cases, the ticks would take very long to make it to the end of the line, right? It would take very long before any potential candidates on this would be considered. Now, another thing I want to talk to you about, and this relates back to what we said previous video about tick synchronization, is this. So if we go to our simplified ticker again, where was it? There we go. If we take the pause and step mod, right, and we pause this and we send a tick through the system, then look at the fact that these displays do not trigger at the same time, right? Now I'm going to send another pulse. So these displays are shut off at different times. And because of what I said, because of what I explained last video with the tick synchronization, that is not at all what we want. We want a set of candidates, which is what the colors represent at this moment. We want them to be passed on in the exact same tick at the exact same moment. So what I am going to do is I'm going to artificially delay these lines so that all of the signals, make it upwards, get sent upwards in exactly the same tick. So the pulse that makes a rightward movement, we are going to need to compensate that. Okay, so what we do is since every step in this process adds 2 ticks, we are going to compensate by 2 ticks every time. So that means we need to add 2 ticks here, we need to add 4 of them here, and we need to add 6 of them here. And now, if we connect that, we can see that if we send pulses through the system, then these displays will light up at exactly the same time, right? So yellow is bypassed. Now we get green, 2, 1, swap. Okay, another pulse. Now we have red and green. And now another pulse. We are going to exchange red and green for blue. So here we go. And in the next tick, boom, they switch at exactly the same moment. Okay, so 1 pulse, 2 pulse, 3 pulse, 4 pulses, 5 pulses, 6 pulses, and every time these displays or these signals get synchronized. Right? That's how that works. That's how the tick synchronization thing works in practice here. And that is why you can see this huge pyramid structures where, I just have these transistors that serve no other purpose than artificially delaying the signals so that they get synchronized in the end. Right? And it doesn't really matter much that the delays are so long, because as I said, the power of this machine is that we can send 1 candidate set every 4 ticks. So it doesn't matter how many of these we have traveling through the system at once, because they will always be at the same pace. So we have our 48 candidates. There is one final thing I would like to address in this video, and that is the importance of the way these things are ordered, sorted, right? There is a rank, or the way they are sorted is not arbitrary. Let's have a look at the following. Imagine we have this shape right here, okay? We could imagine, theoretically, we could imagine or conceptualize 2 floating pieces in this shape. The first one is this one, and the second one is its complement, this one, okay? However, due to the mechanics of this game, due to the fact that you can only stack a shape on top of another shape, I hope it's fairly easy to see that these 2 floating pieces can never ever make up this part. If the way the analysis works in my in the way I set it up, if we input this, then technically the analyzer would extract those 2 floating pieces and it would consider them as candidates. However, you can see that this input shape on the left, it does not have any floating pieces on it, right? This shape is stable. So, and if we extract this piece and this piece from it, if we find them both, then we know that we can't ever use them together because the both of them make up a stable piece. Are you with me? So I carefully lined up, I made sure that I put these shapes, the equivalents of these shapes, I always put them next to each other. and I connected them with an AND OR gate, right? Because the AND OR gate can tell us that if we have both of these shapes, if we find both of these floating pieces in the final shape, then we can discard both of them because they will not contribute to the final shape. I hope you are with me. So let's look at that in the actual decoder again. So these pieces we just demonstrated, that those would actually be these right here. So let's demonstrate that live. So here are the inputs, and you can see that we find both of these floating layers, right? This piece and this piece. However, because of what we just said, we know we can rule both of them out, and that's why I connected an XOR gate. And if the XOR gate gets input from both sides, well, then it will shut off both signals. And this means that we can actually radically simplify the machine, because this way we can get from 48 inputs to 24 binary ticks that we need to consider, right? So only if one of these has a shape, then we can send it through and consider it as a candidate. But if we find two, then none of them gets through. So that means that we can never ever have more than 24 candidates. It took me a while to figure that out. In the beginning, I considered all 48 candidates, but at a given point, it dawned on me that we don't need that. This is a very easy way to cut the potential total of candidates in half. So we only need to consider 24 candidates, and that is how that works. So we have gotten to the end of this video. This is the first step of the machine. In the next video, we are going to talk about what happens after these floating shape signals get analyzed and sent into the rest of the machine. So we're going to have a look at what the rest of the machine is. But for today, I am going to wrap it up. So I hope you found it interesting. As always, I hope you had fun watching. Thank you for doing that, and I hope to see you again in the next video. Have a lovely day. Bins out. Take care. Bye-bye.